Ladies and gentlemen, this is a new episode of Windows. 2 weeks, in a specific 13 days in the White House. Donald Trump. And since the very first moment he's there, he is taking such decisions to make all people around the globe saying that Trump of the presidential campaign is the same Trump of the White House. But to what extent this is going to continue? And to what extent this is to be for the best interest of the Americans? Will this continue this way, or when it comes to politics, it's a game which no one is able to expect its surprises? We are going to discuss these 2 weeks in detail and the decisions taken during these 2 weeks by American President Donald Trump with our dear guest live here in the studio, Ambassador Dr. Reda Farahat, our political analyst of this episode. Thank you very much for being with us, sir.
Thank you.
As I said, we are speaking about Donald Trump and what Donald Trump did in those 2 weeks. And let's start with the very first decision taken by Trump, which was just putting an X on the so-called Obamacare, the health care. Do you think this was his real concept about health service in America, or this was, as I said, to prove to the Americans and to the whole world that Trump of the presidential campaign is the same Trump, and all his promises which he had given during his presidential campaign are going to be fulfilled during his presidency period?
Contrary to expectations, Donald Trump was elected as the 45th President of the United States with a platform which is anti-institutions, which is populist, and he caters to the temperament of a great chunk of the American society. Mm-hmm. He seems to believe in freewheeling economic and social policy. So it is no wonder that he campaigned to abolish the health care of President Obama. Mm-hmm. This is what is important for us is to watch and see how the situation unfold, especially in relation to his foreign policy.
We are going to go to this, but I mentioned this Obamacare issue or yes, this decision in specific as an example of how Trump is thinking and how the group or his assistants are also trying to give him as a piece of advice. First, to gain the trust of all Americans, and then to move from the local or the domestic file to the foreign policy, or
yeah,
what?
Yeah, all right. He believed that this care program is not serving the people, and that it's a burden on the taxpayers and so on. So no wonder he scrapped this. And of course, this is his platform, what he promised to do.
And also during his very first speech after taking oath, he said that he has a very simple rule: buy American, hire American.
Uh-huh.
And some analysts said that this is only to attract those who are very much opposing him as a president, and others said no, this is what he really believes in. Which is which, in your opinion?
Which is which? Donald Trump is unconventional president, mm-hmm, and what he's doing is that he doesn't believe in globalization.
Yeah.
He doesn't believe in World Trade Organization, mm-hmm,
and
he believes in bilateral trade agreements. However, I would say that he's amenable to a discussion, that he could alter his views later. And we have seen this during the first visit of British Prime Minister Theresa May, when he has previously said that he believes that the NATO is obsolete. And she quoted him as saying that he believes in the NATO 100%, that he's committed to NATO 100%. Again, the question of interrogation under resorting to some method, some means of torture. And he said that his assistants, they don't accept this, and they will override him. So I think at this, it is premature to judge the President Trump at this junction, but I could see that he's adopting protectionist policies.
And there are signs which we are going to also analyze, but if you permit me, we do have via phone Dr. Atif Abdelgawad, Professor of International Relations. Dr. Abdelgawad, good evening.
Good evening, how are you?
Sir, we were speaking about Trump, and since you are with us, I should seize the opportunity to speak about something which is happening today, which is the American-Iranian ties. And let me quote this, because this is a very important issue, and I think it's going to lead to more, if not repercussions, then developments. Senior U.S. congressional Republicans say they will support new sanctions on Iran, and President Donald Trump says nothing is off the table in dealing with Tehran in the wake of its test firing of a ballistic missile. To what extent do you think it's possible that the accord or the deal signed between Washington and Tehran can be shaken, or at least not to be implemented the same way under the new U.S. administration?
Now, in theory, yes, that is possible. However, practically, it's unlikely that Mr. Trump would cancel that agreement for a very simple reason, and that is the nuke agreement, as you know, is not just between the U.S. and Iran. It involves 5 other countries. And any withdrawal by Mr. Trump from the agreement would risk more tensions with some of his allies, some of those 5 countries. And I think more probably what we'll see happen is that Mr. Trump will watch and see if Iran complies totally and completely with the agreement. So that's number one. Number two, he might try to renegotiate some aspects of that agreement. But we have to remember that Mr. Trump will separate Iran's ballistic program from the nuke agreement. The same policy that Barack Obama had pursued. So he might go along with the agreement as long as Iran complies with it. On the other hand, if Iran continues to launch missiles, I think that might push Mr. Trump for more drastic action against Iran.
Sir, regarding the rhythm or the quick rhythm of Donald Trump, I mean, he had a lot of statements, and he met with Theresa May, the British Prime Minister. He held phone calls with Merkel and Hollande. He spoke about a wall between the United States and Mexico. He canceled the Obamacare in his very first day in the White House. He is speaking, for example, about immigration, and said he is disappointed with the the agreements signed by the previous administration regarding the immigration issue, a lot of decisions and a lot of surprising decisions, if I may say so. How do you see this rhythm? I mean, is he going that fast, or this is normal, or he's trying to prove something?
I think what we will see happen, and I think we are already witnessing that, we will see two different Mr. Trumps. One Trump is the election campaign Trump. But the other Trump that is emerging right now is a person who is being modified by the impact and influence from his advisors and secretaries, especially Secretary of Defense and Secretary of State, and also the new CIA director. And the reason I'm saying that is that if you think about his own personal position on torture, he said, I personally believe in torture. I personally would adopt torture. I think it brings great results.
Yeah.
But however, I'm going to leave the final decision up to my Secretary of Defense. And of course, we know that General Mattis, the new Secretary of Defense, has already stated that torture violates American law, and he would not recommend using torture. So by giving you that example, I'm showing you how Mr. Trump is being modified by the influence of his senior advisors and new cabinet members. So hopefully we will see a more moderate Mr. Trump in the weeks and months ahead.
Yes, sir. Dr. Atif Abdelgawad, Professor of International Relations, thank you very much for your input, sir. And let me take it from here. Tomorrow is another day, and I'm all the time saying that the president-elect is not the president. The one who is only a candidate is not the one who is already occupying the chair. But whenever it comes to 6 Arab countries, for 90 days, they are deprived from entering the United States. I think that this is the very first time in the history of the United States. How do you see this as a decision by Trump?
This decision smacks of racism somehow, and it is contrary to a convention on refugees in 1951, which also established the Higher Commission for Refugees, one of the specialized agencies of the United Nations, and also the humanitarian aspect.
This is another story.
But I heard some analysts saying that those countries provided were easy to recruit for jihadist activities in the United States. Anyway, it is a sweeping generalization because it is there are people who are good and bad within one country, one state, and the Muslim teachings, the Islamic teachings, they don't advocate violence. This is a brand of extremism which is misguided, and it shouldn't be adopted as a rule. But this coincides with a climate of ideas. The climate of ideas, the thesis of Samuel Huntington, Clash of Civilizations, that there would be a clash. One of the faiths he advocated that would be run against the Western civilization is Islam, and this is one thing, and also this is coincides with Islamophobia.
Sure.
the spread of the phenomenon of Islamophobia. And Islamophobia is unfortunately driving some statesmen to adopt unreasonable positions. But Mr. Trump said that this is not the first time it happens, that there was a ban for 6 months on refugees during the Obama era, and that it is only for 90 days, and but for refugees it's for 4 months. So I think that this is rather unfortunate that he's adopting this view, especially, as I said, the humanitarian aspect.
The humanitarian aspect is a disaster. Simply, you would find people from all over the world stranded from those 7 countries in the U.S. airports. But let's move to the bright side of the coin. There's another statement by Donald Trump in which he said that in 30 days he will be able to get rid of Daesh, meaning that he is going to fight Daesh in another way, and then he is going to get rid of the so-called caliphate, which has nothing to do neither with Islam nor with the caliphate, whether in Syria or in Iraq. How do you see the statements, or to be accurate, to decide that he is going to do this exactly in 30 days? Are these decisions well studied? I mean, his assistants, for example, the group around him, have they studied all these decisions even before taking oath, even before entering the White House? Or these are decisions only taken through the last 10 days?
Well, I would say that the Obama administration was hesitant regarding Daesh and Al-Qaeda and so on. So this is positive, of course, if he decides to eliminate this evil, and we are for it. This is our president would be supportive of this goal, and there should be cooperation, international cooperation. The United States alone cannot do it.
United States alone cannot do it? United States, the biggest country in the world, cannot defeat Daesh?
Usually they look for alliances. They look for those the alliance of the willing, like they did in the previous occasion when they supported the restoration of Kuwait. So I think my idea is that President El-Sisi called for convening an international conference on terrorism.
Yes.
The problem with terrorism is that some construe the liberation movements as terrorist. And we can see this in the statement what Mr.
But there is no international definition for the word of terrorism in the first place, sir.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yes, I mean, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, since his very first days even as a president, and I think it was in September 2014, in his very first speech in front of the UN, he said that terrorism is a global phenomenon and it's not directed to a special region or a special people or a special country. It's a threat to the whole world, and we should unite. And by the word, by the pronoun we here, he meant the whole world in front of this terror. But unfortunately, the whole world did not learn the lesson except after the loss of many lives. Now the case is different with Trump. In what sense? Trump, we cannot deny that he is a businessman, a tycoon. And when it comes to money, he is a master of how to manage money. If you want me to defend you, then pay first. This is his point of, this is his way of thinking. How this is going to affect the war on terrorism on behalf of the United States?
Well, burden sharing was also floated before, because you know, the United States doesn't want the other members of the NATO to have an easy ride, a free ride, or but with President Trump, there is an emphasis, a stress on the question of the financial burden that they have to pay for defending them, for equipping them with arms and so on. So that is what happened. Even in his, you will see, if you take his foreign policy with regard to China, to the European Union, to India. Anyway, it is unfolding, and as you said, that he has the mentality of the businessman, but he says America first, and this is the wish of a great sector, of the American society. They want to reduce unemployment. Because the multinationals have been seeking cheap labor and free investment climate, and going to China, to the exclusive economic zones, to so
practitionism, if we may invent a word.
Yes.
But to this extent, sir, to that extent, Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly tells Fox News he hopes to have a southern border wall finished within 2 years. Wall? I mean, have you imagined that this would happen on the ground one day, to have a wall separating the United States from Mexico?
This is what the Israelis are doing with the Palestinians, but it is a different context.
Completely different story and completely different context.
But what he's claiming is that the Mexicans are taking the jobs, they're smuggling drugs. Of course, he's trying to scrap the NAFTA, this economic block of...
Let me take it from here and just read it as is. Trump reiterates his concerns about the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, and says he would like to speed up talks to either negotiate or replace it. Would you please elaborate?
Yeah, Trump is a unilateralist, that he doesn't believe in these economic blocks. And that's why he also was for the Brexit. That he was supporting Britain leaving the European Union. And he believes in bilateral trade agreements, and he thinks that they are the losers within this economic area, and that explains it. And also, as I said, he's adopting these protectionist policies which run against globalization, against free trade, climate, and so on.
And the blocks, as you've kindly mentioned, he is against blocks.
Yes.
Sir, regarding his foreign affairs, and we should move a little bit closer to speak about what's going on in the Middle East. Even before taking oath, even before entering the White House, he nominated a hardliner to be his ambassador in Tel Aviv.
Yeah.
And there were also these media reports speaking about the possibility of moving the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Western Jerusalem. And of course, we had global reactions, including a reaction from the Foreign Ministry. And
I think Jerusalem, not particularly West Jerusalem.
West, not East. East.
No, I mean, the concept of moving the embassy to Jerusalem has serious connotations.
Yes.
Because of the claim of Israel that unified Jerusalem is their eternal capital, and negation of the UN resolution concerning the inadmissibility of acquiring territories by force. So what we see that some people say they will move it to West Jerusalem, not East Jerusalem, which in the future should belong to a Palestinian state.
And because of this Palestinian leader, Mahmoud
I
Abbas,
would
and
say
Saab Arqad, the top
I don't.
Palestinian negotiator, said that if this move took place, it would destroy the Middle East peace process, and and nothing can revive it once again. And maybe also because of this, when President al-Sisi was asked about this move in specific, he said, let's wait and see, and we cannot judge till the moment the decisions of the new U.S. administration actions, and we should wait and see. How do you see this, I mean, diplomatically?
The question is that the decision to move the embassy to Jerusalem was adopted few years ago by the American Congress. However, the president, they used to adjourn it, to postpone it for 6 months, and then 6 months. That's what so it was already there. What is...
Who dares, sir? Let's be more specific.
Sorry?
Who dares?
Who dares? What happens? We have in our policy was that if a country moves its embassy to Jerusalem, then we would sever our diplomatic relations with it. And this happens in the case in a country which was my first posting in El Salvador.
Yeah.
El Salvador did this, and the relations were cut off, and we have an interest section there. But in the case, but I think that President Trump is slowing a bit on this. But however, we could see it in a different light.
Yeah.
That President Trump, it is a remote possibility, could influence Mr. Netanyahu into that it is in their interest to accept the two states solution.
Sir, regarding this issue in specific, the American-Egyptian relations are strategic, and they were described as strategic on all levels, whether by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi more than once, or by Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry for many times and in many occasions.
Yes.
And today, in specific, there is an American delegation which met with President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the American Institute for Middle East Studies, and they spoke, or they discussed a lot of issues of mutual concern, on top of which are the mutual bilateral relations, in addition to reviving the Middle East peace process and the expectations or the expected visit by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to Washington. How do you see the Egyptian-American relations under Trump?
You are referring to an NGO, non-governmental organization. Yes, what happens is that there is an invitation extended to President Sisi to visit, but there is an agreement that there should be proper preparations because there are many issues to be dealt with, and so it is the fact that this delegation you mentioned, this is something very important because it highlights the role of the think tanks. I belong to the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs.
Yeah.
This is a counterpart to such think tanks, and more often than not, their recommendations and their counsel is sought. And
can we include the think tanks, sir, under the umbrella of the so-called popular diplomacy?
Yes, popular diplomacy or public diplomacy is, how do you define it? It is also very close to soft power. Soft power is that because you can achieve your goals, you can realize your influence not by resorting to hard power, which is the military, but by like your culture, but even with economic assistance. And in the case of the United States, Hollywood, you know, the symbols of America, the McDonald's and
Sir,
Coca-Cola.
regarding, let me take this from this popular or public diplomacy to the official level. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi held a meeting with President Donald Trump when he was, by then, just the presidential candidate. And the meeting was very fruitful. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi praised the way Trump is thinking, and Trump praised the way the Egyptian president is thinking about many issues of mutual concern. And of course, among the issues discussed was the war on terrorism. How do you see this developing? I mean, in the coming stage in specific, because when it comes to the war on terrorism in the Middle East, Egypt is a key player. And worldwide, of course, the United States is a key player.
You see, President Sisi, when last September was attending the UN General Assembly, and he met both candidates, Secretary Hillary Clinton and Mr. Trump. Somehow the way Clinton dealt in her discussion with him was not very acceptable. She went even into interfering in the domestic affairs of Egypt. And on the other hand, Trump was more cordial, and he thought it's said that he said that he would be not only an ally to Egypt but a loyal friend, and that there is a common goal to fight terrorism. So I think Egypt.
Let's pose this question once again and to listen to another point of view, as we do have via phone Dr. Ahmed Abu Doma, another political analyst and a member of the Egyptian Council of Foreign Affairs. Dr. Abu Doma, hello.
Hello.
Sir, good evening first, and thank you very much for being with us. I was asking, as I do have my dear guest live here in the studio here, Ambassador Dr. Reda Farahat, about the Egyptian-American ties, strategic ties. But of course, since there is a new administration, we should expect, or at least analyze, try to have a look on the coming period. How do you see the Egyptian-American ties under the new U.S. administration under Donald Trump?
The new administration under the presidency of Mr. Trump, he was very clear in his campaign, and he is tackling the terrorism as a main issue for the national security for the United States.
Yes.
And he also said that he will fight terrorism everywhere, which is the opposite direction totally of the Democrats regime or administration before.
Yeah.
So his first steps is already seen and well known to everybody. The cooperation between Egypt and the United States on the administration level, I predict that this will be a better relationship between both. As Egypt, we have to fight terrorism in Sinai, for instance, and in the same time, the terrorism has no land and has no limits and has no religion. So,
and no nationality, no
and
borders.
No nationality.
Yeah.
People just have their own beliefs out of logic, out of sense, out of religions, that they have the mercy of God by killing people. So I think we will have a new cooperation between the United States new administration and the Egyptian administration.
Let's wait and see. And this is exactly what President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi said when he was asked about the new administrations. He said that we cannot judge till the moment, and we should wait and see. But we expect, as you've kindly mentioned, that our ties with Washington are going to be better, and we are going to unite to face terrorism as a real goal. Professor Dr. Ahmed Abu Doma, our political analyst, thank you very much for your input, sir.
I would add that this would entail resuming providing arms to the Egyptian army, joint military exercises. Even it would go so far as to influence the United Kingdom not to provide a safe haven for the extremist Islamic.
Our Chief of Staff, General Mahmoud Hijazi, is in London as we speak, and he had very important meetings with the minister, the British Minister of Defense, or with his British counterparts. So tomorrow is another day, and we are going to speak in detail in another occasion, inshallah, about the developments of this or their fruitful results of this visit. But unfortunately now, sir, we are running out of time. Ambassador Dr. Reda Farahat, our political analyst of this episode of Windows, thank you very much for your input, sir. Have a very good evening.
Thank you very much for your input also.
Thank you, sir. Well, by this we come to the end of this episode of Windows. On behalf of my dear colleague Dina Hussein, Ashraf Makram, myself Nermina Abdurrahman, many thanks for watching. Have a very good night.